Hello and welcome back to Control Alt Marketing. I'm your host Meeta Mandavkar, and if you missed our last episode with SaaS marketing leader Pranjalee Lahri, hit pause and go check it out. It's packed with career gems you don't want to miss. Pranjalee opened up about everything from her unexpected journey into marketing to the power of adaptability and staying true to your values. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Today, she's back to share even more insights to help you make better career decisions as a marketer. So, let's dive into the final part of Pranjalee's story. Wait, I think the one thing I realized, I kind of moved the conversation a little bit more into networking and just understanding about your time being spent in such long spans in particular places. But I think one thing that I would like to understand next is later on when you moved into a leadership role. So when you're working in marketing as a manager, your challenges are very different. You are very heavily involved in tactical stuff, but the lens has to change when you become a leader. You have to become more strategic. You have to manage up. You have to actually advocate for your team. You have to advocate for the campaigns. You have to actually do a lot of back and forth with so many stakeholders on proving the ROI and the whole marketing effort that is happening. So, what challenges have you faced actually, transitioning into that particular role over your career? And just how do you actually go about honing those leadership skills? I think that happens eventually, but still, what are some efforts that, you've put in very concertedly in that direction?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what, and again, this is not exactly, doesn't speak into leadership per se, but it does talk about my first promotion where I had my own team, right? And this is again, back to the company, the 8 years where I spent at this company. And my first promotion came about, it was, I believe, 2.5 years or 3 years into that role. And I was so excited. I was like, I was born for this. I couldn't have been more happier, right? And I soon realized that maybe I had this image and this false impression of what team management and leadership in that form looked and what the reality really was panning out. And again, I call this out because in so many companies and in so many roles, when you get promoted, especially when it entails some form of team management and you don't get the proper training, which you really need, what ends up happening is just poor decision-making, ill management, and maybe even, spoiling relationships with your peers. Spoiling relationship with your peers because now suddenly you're at 1 degree higher than them and they're probably not taking this in the right most way possible. So a lot of my leadership actually came from, again, the baptism by fire, but having put into a role where I thought I was ready for it and only to realize that maybe this is all going wrong. I went and spoke to my manager then, of course. He was the founder, one of the co-founders of the company. And I said, maybe I'm not ready for this. And I think it was also a self-reflection. I had the degree of self-awareness to feel and know that I wasn't ready for it. And I went and I told him that maybe I'm not ready for it. He was kind enough to give me some leeway. He told me that, okay, maybe take 3 months. Probably you don't have to be this person at this level and, immediately do all the things we expect of you. You can gradually start growing into the role. And also you have the deep transition into the newer version of you versus what they were expecting to. Because all of these guys were there at the company before I came in. And imagine I worked with them with 3 years and suddenly now I'm their manager. It didn't fit right. Anyway, so that was the start of where the first leadership gave me a slice into what it does look like. And over the years, then I believe it was largely about the team that we were ramping up or with the people that I was working with, whether it was cross-functional or not. It gradually became evident that all of the executional tasks that I was initially tasked with, were no longer that important. Right now, what the expectations from me were changing, right? It wasn't just on the OKRs or the KRAs that what I was expected to do was changing. It was just very evident in conversations I was having with my leadership then. I think the biggest change came, by the way, the first company, after I spent a good amount of time there, I finally reached the level of AVP marketing, had a team of 10, and that is really how I kind of grew the team almost as I grew there. But this was still a smaller company. We had about 200 employees in total. And then I moved to this fast-growing startup, which is now a unicorn. And suddenly I'm thrown into this larger kind of, hierarchy and a larger kind of ecosystem of people where a leadership is just very, very different. And the nature of my role then, because I was overseeing a different region altogether, made it even more interesting, right? Because one, Southeast Asia is a different geography altogether. Working with local teams there, understanding the cultural nuances, working with leadership team, etc., now became just so much more trickier. And what I realized then is really identifying what is it that each of the stakeholders wanted out of me, right? And wanted of me meaning that it was me and my team, but largely I was the face, the stakeholder, the ownership was largely with me. So everything that I did or my team did was largely what the leadership and the stakeholders that were working with me wanted. So identifying those and then working along with my team to tactically have the to-dos and the exact plans identified became a way of working. So a lot of the strategic know-how, the hard skills to analytics for that matter, so much of our analytics and metrics, some portions of them just get washed out, right? When you're in the weeds, probably you're just doing it. You're looking at just the leading metrics and you're happy with the numbers that are showing up. You're probably not so much responsible for the down funnel. And suddenly now you're responsible for everything from the start to the end. So that was a transition in itself, right? And I want to say that there was a lot of learning that I want to do. And that is what I continue to do to this day. I listen to podcasts. Like even today as a consultant, I'm supposed to be the one person with all the knowledge and the right kind of solution to problems. I know that I need to be learning every single day to represent that for that kind of expectation of me. So I believe that a lot of leadership skills came through how I traversed through my career and what I also saw people alongside me do, right? And that's just some people that, you kind of feed off and you like something in them. So you borrow that from that person, the way the person talks maybe, or the way the person navigates certain things. I was just trying to absorb all these things, mix and mash, and make this a part of my own way of working and modus operandi.
One thing that I would really like to understand, Pranjali, is say for instance, like a lot of us are solo marketers. A lot of us are working in very lean setups and probably don't have access to marketing leaders. So in those kind of circumstances, like what do you think would be like a good way for a person to actually build those sort of leadership chops? Because it's more than it's not just about doing your work, right? It's also about a lot of other things like, stakeholder management. Like you mentioned, you were working with so many different folks across a different region. Like how does a person who's doing this alone, who doesn't have much access to people, go about doing it?
Well, I don't know if I have the correct answer to it, to be very honest, right? Because I feel like a lot of your skills actually get better when you put them into practice. If you do not maybe have the full ecosystem to really, kind of work with a team, maybe you'll take a longer time. Maybe. Again, I don't know. And I'm speaking from my experience that maybe because I had teams where I could, try out things and get better at it, it just made it easier because I could see what things were working and what were not. I believe, and I'm just going to maybe just take a stab at answering this question. If you do not have a team where you could try out your leadership jobs, perhaps the best way is really to lean into all of the studies and all of the, kind of podcasts and whatnot out there to understand what it is that you need to do to imbibe in yourself to be a better leader, right? So as and when the situation presents itself, you can really, kind of work almost like organically without having to trying to figure out what should I do now and how should I really function. I think that's the best I could really suggest at this point in time.
I think one thing that I'm frankly very curious about is, you mentioned that first instance, that when you felt that you were not really ready, things were not working out, you had waited long for that promotion, it finally happened, you had a team, and later you had like a smooth running and you went on to become like an EVP over there. So, when you were in those very initial days of, becoming a manager, becoming a leader, and your manager was also like, take this easy, take it slow, just go about building, things your way. How did you actually go about it? I mean, you gave like a very broad picture, but I think I would be very curious to understand, how did you actually go about, easing the team into the new way of things? How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, again, what I was trying to do then is continue this relationship that I had with my team. And that was the most important to me then, right? Because I knew that if I were supposed to achieve anything, it wasn't going to be without the support of the team. So my first priority then was forget about what my KRAs for that year are going to look like, because they have now changed. It was about how do I continue showing my team that I am there with them in the weeds. So for I believe 3 to 4 months beyond the period that he had actually given me, I continued doing a large amount of execution still. And we were still a very small team, right? Which meant that I wasn't really just elevated to a strategic level and I was hands off with everything. But I continued to even work with the team in the daily to-dos, solving the same things that I was doing with it prior to the promotion. Very honestly, I wanted them to feel like I was the same person. Nothing had changed. I had the same intent for their growth as I had for mine and the companies. And that helped. Because I believe the team was able to see very, very quickly that, okay, I hadn't changed so much, right? I was still being the same person, having the same similar expectations. And then slowly along the way, after I helped them with the execution, I then started moving one step, maybe higher to say, okay, now that I was in this, we are probably going to bring in a person to help us with this part, and I'll no longer be supporting you here, right? But that was then now build the entire team wrap up. The design of it was built in a fashion that allowed the team to appreciate the growth in a way that wasn't intrusive, or that wasn't really, what's the right way to say that? That wasn't really compromising on what they were capable of, but was rather towards a bigger picture of what we were able to achieve. On the back end, though, there was a lot of maybe new things that I was trying to learn for myself. Like some of the reports I had to put together, I had to figure out what's going to be the best way to put a report, not just in terms of the format, but what are going to be the right metrics to show in there, because that is what is going to matter to my management. And probably the rest of the things can stay with my team. So figuring those things out, I believe some of these were parallel process. As I was doing this, I was also starting to do that. But it was really a very slow grind, a very slow brick by brick laying activity that I had to do to finally feel like, okay, I could now reach a point where I could, maybe take one step back and say that, okay, now this is a role I'm going to play, the new role I'm going to play. Nothing changes here, but this is what you can expect from me. And this is what I'm going to start expecting from you. And I believe that buy-in kind of thing had to happen and had started happening more kind of, in a frictionless way as we could.
And I think this worked in your scenario. Every scenario might need a different approach depending on the team, depending on the maturity of the team, experience levels, everything else. But yeah, I think that's a very great approach to take, especially when easing the team and also easing yourself into a new role. Because that way it works out for everyone. There are no abrupt and no sudden changes, because sudden changes also tend to manifest very differently sometimes. So I think that's a really great approach of, actually going ahead and bringing in the new order, I think, so to speak.
But I'll tell you what. So this is not just about being an in-house person and trying to climb the ranks. Now that I'm a marketing consultant, for some of my companies, I am actually brought on board where they have an existing team. Believe it or not, it's actually a harder piece to solve, because this is a team where they practically get to meet me for a couple of hours in the day. It's largely FaceTime that I have with them, and they have to trust a stranger, almost a stranger on the other side of the screen, now to tell them what is it that they need to do with their marketing. So I believe a large amount of what I said, that working with them, supporting them, solving their questions, helping them do their stuff and enabling that is still a part of what I do when I work as a fractional CMO for my companies now. And I have to build that trust with their teams, because without that, really, everything I'm saying is just talk, right? Nothing is going to translate into the outcomes that we want to achieve together. So yeah, I think that that's the same model that could be applied in different situations.
That's actually true. I think trust is the biggest binding factor behind everything that we do, especially when we work together. There needs to be a trust involved, because otherwise, yes, there's nothing you can build off of it. So yeah, I think that's a great, and it's good to know that I would say it's something that is not going to go out of fashion anytime. It's an invaluable.
Guys, trust somehow, we will see, but I don't see this really getting old-fashioned anytime soon.
Yeah, totally. I think that brings me to a very kind kind of a slightly related question, but what do you think, because this has been like a very non-marketing skill, what do you think are like some non-marketing skills which have been extremely invaluable in your career? Like, we know that there are some hardcore skills that we need, but what about the non-marketing skills? They help you go a long way. Like you mentioned, trust building, the whole collaboration part of it, just having that empathy for your team. So what are some of those that you believe that, are like absolutely unmissable?
Well, I'm just going to start off with the last one that you said, empathy, right? And we throw this word around so much. And I don't know if I'm also 100% empathetic in all cases. I try to be, but I don't know if I am, right? But I feel like just the softer skills are the ones that take you a long way. And again, there is an importance for hard skills and the soft skills equally. But I feel like so much of our work life and so much of our work is actually a determinant of how you work along with your teams, cross-functional leadership, whoever, external, internal, doesn't matter. Right? And I feel like then the skills like just collaboration. And collaboration in this day and age is just so critical. Because maybe at least I came from a time where physical in-office work was the only way we knew, right? And collaboration was easier, not easy. At least you had, some kind of in-person time to really understand people. These days, it's really, kind of trying to converse on communication apps and all of these things. I think collaboration and communication is just so critical. And especially when you're talking to hybrid and diverse teams, that is what we all have these days, right? You have a part of your team that sits in a different part of the country or maybe in a different country altogether. It's important to really understand and appreciate and align to their way of working. I'll just quickly, kind of bring up an anecdote. So in the previous example of the Southeast Asia that I was giving you, I had to align to the time zones. And for the good part, Southeast Asia is not so far apart from India. There is a very small time gap. But even with that, it was important that my evenings were their late evenings. So I couldn't just, wait for the end of the day to ask someone something. Or maybe talking to someone where their native language was Thai, while mine was English, and English wasn't like the best way to communicate. Just figuring out ways to make this possible became so important. So I believe that communication, collaboration, and of course, empathy is kind of, I believe, the broader umbrella for all of this. Because without that, you wouldn't be able to take the efforts in the direction of trying to get the communication or the collaboration right. I think those are the three ones that I would call out.
I think one thing that I would, so before we get into your new innings as a self-employed marketing consultant, fractional CMO, I think one thing that I would really like to understand is when you're in the middle stage of your career or when you're mid-career professional, one thing that you're always told is you have to be more strategic, think first principles, think critical thinking. You have to zoom out a bit, look at the big picture. But very rarely you're told that, this is how you go about doing it. That's a skill you have to essentially develop on your own. You have to read. You have to, again, consume a lot of material. You have to speak with folks. But as a leader, it's an invaluable and non-negotiable skill to have. So how have you gone about actually building that particular skill? Like any pointers around that?
So a large amount of the skills that I had to build really came from understanding what my stakeholders expected of me. I was very, very clear in that one thing, right? If the stakeholder expected me to deliver a revenue or revenue influence, for example, if that is what the expectation was, I knew that I had to be strategic to a particular degree, but also tactically help my team with whatever else. I don't know if I had ever the first principle mindset or a principle or, one of those much beautifully laid down frameworks that I ever internalized. I don't think I really used that. A large amount of what I did and how I function came from my need at the moment and really understanding that in reality and feasibly, what is it that I could do? So I think a lot of strategic building and mindset building really comes from one, identifying what your stakeholders want from you, how your role now kind of has evolved. And what is expected of you, and then to identify if you have those skills that are needed. Many companies now offer training, learning and development programs, made it easier, not the easiest for you to go and get that particular, course or whatever else, kind of at least request for those. But I believe it comes from you identifying it, not so much so waiting for your HR or your L&D team to come and identify as a skill gap on your career path for you to know that this is what you should do. Again, I'm just kind of, giving a very, maybe a broad answer, not exactly the steps to it, but I believe that is going to be the only way to go.
Got it. I think that's helpful too. I think just having that awareness about what the expectations are, and then just figuring out the gaps where you are falling short of to just meet those expectations. That's a good start to have. And continuing on the same note, I think I would like to unpack your decision of actually. So you were doing very good in your career. You moved. I think you moved from a very different setup altogether, like from fairly established companies to a unicorn later on. And then later on, you came to a place wherein you were like, okay, I need to try and do something different. And you got into like a very fractional consulting side of things, which is a completely different ball game altogether. So how did that decision come across? Like, from being a properly in-house employed resource to like, going ahead and doing your own thing.
Yeah. So I honestly wanted to take a break after my last stint, right? I thought that I'm going to take a 3-month break specifically. And I announced this to my friends and family. I was like, for 3 months, I'm going to do nothing, because throughout my career, I'd not really taken a break other than my maternity leave, right? And I thought like I needed one just to rejuvenate. I'd just kind of get my energies back. Believe it or not, 3 days in, I started getting impatient. And I was like, maybe this is not the right decision of trying to take a break for 3 months. And it was around the same time that some people in my network got in touch with me, and they got to know that I recently left my previous job, and they offered me a full-time position. And I honestly had zero emotional, cognitive bandwidth to take it up, and I just respectfully declined that. So moving from an in-house marketer role and pivoting to a marketing consulting role was really just an organic pull than my push, because the same companies then offered me an opportunity to join them as a consultant. And I was anxious as hell, right? So I'm a very planned, very structured person who needs a visibility, clarity to what's going to happen this month, that month down the line, right? Now knowing that in a consulting route, that's going to be not always true, right? The visibility may not be there. The security of this client being with you for these many months may not be there. All of those were really things I had to work upon, but it helped that I have a very, very supportive family, right? So one of my initial deterrents to myself, not to anyone, was, will I be able to, one, meet my pay package? And second, how do I ensure that I keep this more sustainably running, and it shouldn't just be a short-term gap arrangement that I do it for a couple of months and go back to, finding my feet in the corporate world. But my husband has always been very, very supportive, and he encouraged me to continue down this path. And so I think all of those things kind of helped me take the decision. Yes, there was a lot of groundwork I had to do for myself to understand what it means to be a consultant, build up a lot of those frameworks and just the ecosystem for myself, because I no longer could tap into, an existing in-house pool of marketers for content writers, graphic or whatever. So building all of that was completely on me. I knew I was running my own race. But at the same time, I knew that this is what I wanted to do, because I wanted to fly solo. I just didn't know if consulting was going to be the right direction for it or not. But it was, again, I believe, the right situations and the right nudge from everyone that told me to get on this path.
Serendipity at work.
Completely.
I think one thing that I would like to know is, so for you, the whole process of getting into like, being your own boss started it was serendipity. It was very organic. It was kind of out of your hands. But there are so many folks who want to be self-employed. Like whenever I speak to someone, I think one thing I get to hear from them is, okay, I don't want to be doing this my entire life. I want to be self-employed. I want to be my own boss. But there is never like a solid plan in place that, okay, I plan to do this. I plan to work for 5 years. I plan to then, save money or raise money. This is the product I'll work on. It's never, there are no solid concrete steps. But I think one thing that I would just like to understand, and this is, I know for you, the journey has been different, but what are some considerations you think people need to really consider before starting off with that self-employment kind of a journey? Because yes, there is a good side to it that you mentioned, and there's also like a very hidden side to it, which doesn't often get highlighted. Considering you've seen the good, bad, and the ugly so far, could you also share like a little bit more about the unspoken things?
I think self-employment, I believe that everyone should do some kind of self-employment, right? Because it's just such a great teacher. It teaches you things about yourself, perhaps that you weren't blindsided to. So in general, I think it's something we should all go through, no matter what it is. Now, coming to some of the lesser spoken things about self-employment, I think first and foremost is always the job security, or just having that kind of pay that you want, because at the end of the day, you still need to pay for your bills and you need to put food on the table. Right? Again, the dynamics and situation changes, and this is not same for all. If you come from a more supportive family where you maybe have your partner doing a more stable job, maybe it's an easier decision. Things, even the dynamics of that change if you have children, if you don't have children, if you have dependents, if you don't have dependents, or whatever kind, right? So I believe one is to really understand your own kind of security cover, like how much of runtime do you have or a runway do you have till you can, probably experiment something, or how much do you really need to start making to whatever, to make your bills or whatever it is. I think have a clarity from a financial perspective is super, super critical. Second, of course, is understanding, do you have it in you to do what it takes to run this sustainably? And I use the word sustainably in a very, very mindful fashion, because it's probably okay for us to start something, but you don't want to go back to, probably what you're doing without giving it the right amount of time. You want to see if this is a gig, this is a stint that you can continue running by yourself or whoever you appointed alongside you. If it's a joint venture, can you do this for a long term? And which is why the ecosystem and just understanding your own self, the self-awareness comes in, right? Because speaking from my experience, it's not the first customer that I got which sealed the deal and I've been sitting duck on it, right? It's every month that I have to keep this front and center. What am I doing to continue building visibility for my profile? What is it that I need to do to keep my customers in the pipeline wall? Who can I talk to now that my agreement with XYZ is coming to an end? You need to understand this of yourself. Do you have it in you, or can you appoint a team? So all of those things I think are critical. The last one, and again, there are multiple more, but that's just the top three. The last one I would say is just your support system, right? It's not just about sometimes your financials alone. If you don't have a partner, or let's say you have a really, you have an infant that needs childcare, and you cannot give your family or your new stint the kind of time and bandwidth it needs, I don't think you'll be doing justice and you'll be doing service to whatever new that you're starting. I believe these are the three main things. And of course, there are so many nitty-gritties to each of these that we can get into, and many more that ensures that you're at least starting out on the right foot.
That sounds good. I think that's like a very good start. It's one thing to actually be self-employed. Yes, there's a beautiful dream to be achieved, but that it's also has to be grounded in practicality, that you actually are setting up yourself for success. Because the three basic things that you mentioned, if you don't have those in place, or if you've not thought about those to some extent, they might actually throw in a spanner when you're actually working on your thing. So it definitely helps to have like a very solid, grounded perspective on, yes, the dream is there. I have this plan to achieve the dream, but yes, these are also the things I need to think about because they will impact it.
Absolutely. And here, I'm not going to be proposing moonlighting and, kind of double hatting and doing all of these things, but I really feel like self-employment doesn't have to be self-employment from day one. You can continue trying something on the side, see how that works, get just into the rigor of it, see if that's something that even fits well into the way you see yourself operating. And if that sticks, great. I mean, it's something that you could continue down the path on. But at the very onset, if you realize that for whatever reason that's not working out, it's a signal. I believe that it's nicer to test the water instead of just jumping on the deep end and then figuring out and thinking, oh my God, what did I get myself into?
That's actually a solid plan. Rather than putting all your eggs in one basket, you're actually just diversifying your risk, minimizing your risk, and you're also giving yourself the time and the grace to figure out if this is something that you want to do. And I think this is quite a bit of a personal question, and maybe I've touched on this when we spoke earlier. So we always, whenever we are talking about career, we like to highlight the success stories. This is what I did, this is what worked well, and this is how, I ended up winning. I think one thing that I would really like to understand is, have you had any instances where things have not really gone as well? And so that was like a very learning or a teaching moment for you, and that changed your perception of your career, or that changed your career for better.
This calls for a different podcast because I just have like a bag full of mistakes and failures, which is of course converted into learning now. But I think if you're not feeling, you're also not growing, right? I genuinely believe that. Of course, you don't want to repeat the same mistake twice. Otherwise, that's just insanity then. But yeah, I have so many. And I mean, from my leadership transitions to just doing things, I can probably call out a few. And there's one that comes to my mind. So at the previous company, the one before my last stint, we were going into PLG, product-led growth. And it was very, very new then. This is the year 2015, if I'm not wrong. And PLG was still very new. Like as a term, it had been freshly coined. We're trying to wrap our heads around it. And I thought, how difficult would it be? You set up a trial, you put a form on your website, and ta-da, you have it all. And that was the biggest kind of fiasco we had, because we ran campaigns that generated a lot of leads. We had nothing done for the aha moments, for capturing the milestones internally to grow that kind of, product adoption. And it was just such a big nightmare that we had to actually, kind of hide that entire page, the button from the website, until we figured out what is it that we wanted to do in the package to really get our act together. So again, I'm just calling her one of the many, but every time that I have done something like that, of course, there is that misery that you live in, but it's important to get out of the misery to understand and get the learning out of it, which is what I've tried to do much better now. Even in my current role, again, as a consultant, when I go in, when the first time I started working with my first customer, I was literally learning on the job, how do I even work with this customer in a consultant capacity? And I'm sure there are so many faux pas that I've done with these customers that have only now gone better with time. So one, give yourself the grace when a faux pas like that happens. But at the same time, don't let it repeat, right? You might as well make a better mistake next time.
I love it. Make better mistakes.
Of course. I mean, otherwise, I don't know anyone who's not made a mistake and unscathed through their entire life made it through. I don't know anyone.
I actually used to have a manager who used to say, make a new mistake every single time. Don't come to me with the old mistakes. And that's kind of stuck with me. And I think, I think that's a great philosophy to have. Make new mistakes, learn, grow, move on. I think growth comes from also failing. A huge, massive growth comes from failing. So yeah, I think that's really great to know. I think I have a few questions I think that I would really like to ask, and this is, I think I call this section as Wisdom Beyond Kotler. I felt so clever when I drafted that segment title. But
clever.
Yeah.
Kotler.
I mean, with marketers, Kotler is like the Bible for us. So it felt like a clever take. I think first thing that I want to ask is, what are what are your top hard learned and hard earned lessons that you would like to share with your 21-year-old self?
Okay, there's so many, but I'm just going to distill them into the top three maybe. Okay, one, I'm going to say, emulate the person you desire to become. And emulate is the word I'm going to use very, very specifically underlined, because it's great to have mentors and advisors, and we all need them, right? But once you've identified your destination, finding a person that has already arrived there, just living out their life path can save you so much trials and tribulations and just take you there faster. So I believe one is that. Second is, don't be afraid to ask. And I think I mentioned about this earlier too, right? That oftentimes we just get so stuck in our own heads and we just play out the what if negative scenario that we just, cannot verbalize what we really desire. So whether it's a salary increment, you want a promotion, you want to have a change of project, even if you want to go and have a mentor, I think just ask. You'll be surprised at how many people are actually open to giving you that opportunity or whatever else that you want. The third one I would say is very, very specific to marketing. The first two, I believe, are still very agnostic. I think marketing, in my opinion, is on such a cusp of disruption and revolution. If you say the number of, just the marketing tech stack, there's an explosion there. The number of new roles in marketing, explosion there. Just everything in marketing, I think, has just undergone so much change. The number of sub-functions or specialization in marketing, you did not have those for the last, I don't know how many years. And now suddenly there's so many have sprung up. I want all of us to know, and my 21-year-old or 22-year-old to know, that you need to be in sync or one step ahead of this change. Without that, you will always be, kind of catching up to something. And you never know. There are other people that are already playing the game better than you.
Loving this advice, totally loving this advice. I think just the part that you mentioned about just go ahead and ask for it. What's the worst that can happen? People will say no, but what if it's what if it's a yes? I think totally agree, totally believe, and I think that's also somewhat similar to what I would share with myself if I were younger. So yeah, I think I totally like it. Great. I think that totally makes sense. I think I have a couple of okay, this is kind of out of the section, but I still want to know generalist versus specialist. What's your take? I think this has always been like a question of hot debate. I believe you've been like a generalist throughout your career, and I would really want your experience to, what is your experience been like being a generalist versus, your experience probably seeing your colleagues, just your take on it.
So yeah, you're right. I am a product of the generalist era, so to speak, because marketing was a singular unit for the longest time, right? It's only in the recent past that you have specialized functions like product marketing, content marketing, field marketing. I don't know what all that has come about, and I'm sure there is more to this continuum. But here's my evolved take on this, right? There's definitely a place for a specialist versus a generalist. Example, for a very early stage startup, you want to have a generalist because one, you have limited resources. You want someone who's able to do everything versus having to worry about who's going to worry about my socials, who's going to worry about my whatever else, right? But as you grow and you start scaling, you need to have specialists because you need to have people with specialized skill sets that can really scale every channel to the level that you want and to really extract the juice from it. So again, I believe that there is a place and time for it, and every company has their own mix of those. Most startups I see today are going more towards the specialist route again as they scale. And I don't know if there is an inflection point in a startup's journey at a 1 mil or a 2 mil mark that really triggers that kind of specialist approach to come in. But I believe that is the way to go forward.
A follow-up question on this. Yes, companies will do what's the best for them in terms of building like a marketing team. But as a marketing leader, like, do you think being a generalist really helped rather than, being like a specialist? Because when a person is a specialist, they tend to be like the functional heads. Yes, marketing is also a sort of functional head, but being a generalist, I believe, kind of feeds better into being like a marketing leader because you have so much of bird's eye view on everything. So what's your experience like with?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I did not touch upon that earlier. I feel like, yes, a generalist gives you that breadth of experience. We spoke about T-shaped marketers for the longest time. It gives you exactly that because you've been there, done that, and you pretty much can speak the same language across the board, which is the greatest strength to have, right? Even for me, when I pivoted from my in-house marketer role to a consultant role, it became very easy to now move into this role because I understood everything there was. If I needed someone, that is, I could easily tap into someone and say, hey, we need someone to specialize here. But I could, just from my experience of being there and done that, could easily spot and say, okay, this is a broken link that needs fixing now. So I feel like, yes, a generalist definitely has a better makings of a leader than a specialist who perhaps has come from a narrower lens and a narrower view of a specialized function.
Got it. And that makes sense. It's about breadth versus depth. Depends on the requirements of the role, and that's how the person would fit in. This conversation has also been a lot about reflection, how the journey has been, how the last 15 years have been, what they've brought, what they have taught, what they've taken to some extent also. How would you reflect on, your career? How would you summarize your journey?
Okay, I'm trying not to be philosophical, but it might sound like, right? I truly believe.
Philosophy is tied closely with life. I think it's totally okay.
Awesome. All right, let's go then. I truly feel like we are all on our own journey, right? And this is not just for marketing, this is for life in general. And a key job, in my opinion, and what I have striven to do all these years is to bring achievement or to bring fulfillment with the things that I felt are important or I feel are important. It may not be an external validation. It may not be what the world deems as important or, great. It is what I want to do for myself. So my own self-reflection is that this has been a journey which has been fulfilling, and I'm in pursuit of that fulfillment still, not because I'm an unhappy person at heart, because I know there is just so much more to life and I'm just probably scratching the surface of it.
Great. I think, thank you so much, Pranjali, for coming on to this very new podcast and, sharing your story so generously with me. It's been a huge honor, and it's been such an eye-opening and a learning experience for me as well to learn about, so many things from you. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much for having me. And this was a great self-reflection. I've been talking so much about self-awareness and self-reflection that this kind of allowed me to distill everything down into something maybe I need to hear out myself, because oftentimes we need reminders for how we want to function. So thank you for doing that.
Great. I'm so happy about this.